Rocky Horror Minute is rated R. The Rocky Horror Picture Show is also rated R. We're going to spend this time discussing the movie in gory detail, and along the road we will talk about some adult content and use some of our favorite swear words.
Scheiß, Mist, Arschloch.
Consider yourselves warned.
Welcome to Rocky Horror Minute, the podcast where we break down the Rocky Horror Picture Show in excruciating detail 1 minute at a time. I'm one of your hosts, Kelly.
And I'm your other host, Leandra.
And today we have a very special guest joining us. It is the lovely and talented Brad Monroe.
Woo!
Listeners of the show may know Brad from Dating Me. But he's also our webmaster, who does such a great job, and a member of the Sonic Transducers Rocky cast. How you doing, Brad?
And your New Year's show cameraman that made my arm very sore.
That is true. He actually helped with photography of both of our major photo shoots, and also photography for my OnlyFans.
He is not unused to having a sore arm from footage of Kelly.
But
you would be surprised how deep it has to go.
That's not what she meant, but also true. Today we'll be discussing minute 67 of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Before we get into the minute, Brad, can you tell us a little bit about your connection to the movie, the first time you saw it, if you remember?
Yeah, sure. So now my main connection to the movie is, I guess, a 3-year shadowcasting fan and shadowcasting career, I guess, after getting bullied into playing Riff by Leandra. So that's been fun. We always need people who can actually lift heavy things on cast, so that's something I'm decently good at. As for my first time seeing the Rocky Horror Picture Show, I actually think that the first time I saw it was live, and it wasn't until pretty later on. I think it was late high school, early college. I saw a Halloween shadowcast at the wonderful Colonial Theater, and as we've learned recently, I think the cast that does that shadowcast is kind of an all-star cast put together from a few other different, mostly Pennsylvania and tri-state area casts, like TNP. They did a wonderful job, and I had a great time. And that theater is beloved. I'm sure Kelly has talked about it on the show before, but if you guys have seen The Blob before, it's the healthfully air-conditioned theater that everyone runs out of in that movie.
Yeah, God, I wish my first time seeing Rocky could have been at the Colonial, but instead it was at my dad's girlfriend's house when I didn't know where my dad was. So I was like, I guess I'll watch this DVD.
Yeah, I think after the showing, we actually met up with the cast for dinner because my friend's cousin was playing Rocky in it at the time, so it was kind of fun to meet all of those that wonderful cast of characters post-show. He actually went to Bistro in, I think, just his Rocky shorts, and that was it. It was a little weird to see him so shirtless.
Well, we're no strangers to going to diners in our Rocky Horror regalia.
Yeah, it's a bit of a power move to go when you're just wearing your
I would put on a shirt.
Yeah.
Leandra doesn't, but I prefer to wear a shirt when I go to restaurants.
Yes, we know me. I am clearly the nude of this group.
Yeah, there isn't someone in your house that has to exclaim, "Watch the window" almost every day.
And if you remembered to hang the curtains back up, this wouldn't be such an issue, would it? Oh, man. So, minute 67. Yeah, and Brad, you chose to come on this minute of the film because it's your favorite, correct?
Yeah. Out of everything in the show, this is the one moment that I'm waiting for.
Leandra, do you know what happens in this minute?
This minute of this movie?
Yes.
No, I do,
Thank
actually.
God.
The minute begins with the sound of the lid of the dinner cart clanging closed. Dr. Scott says hesitantly, "We came here to discuss Eddie." Surprised at this, Columbia says, "Eddie?" But before she can say more, Frank threatens her with the electric carving knife. Riff and Magenta stand behind Frank, Magenta with a face of just absolute hatred, while she continues to chew on some gristle. Throwing the knife back onto the table, Frank takes a moment to calm his face and then, smiling, returns to eating and says, "That's a rather tender subject. Another slice, anyone?" The view returns to over Rocky's shoulder, where we see Janet, Brad, and Dr. Scott realize that they are eating human flesh. The next shot is from Dr. Scott's point of view, where we see Rocky furiously continuing to eat. Next to Rocky, we see Columbia with a queasy and grief-stricken look on her face push her chair away from the table. She says, "Excuse me," as she rises. Dr. Scott has his head bowed in sadness as Columbia is seen walking past him and out of the room. She closes the doors behind her. Dr. Scott turns around to look, and we hear Columbia let out an anguished cry of sorrow from the other side of the door. The camera returns to Frank, now dousing his human flesh roast in ketchup, while Riff looks on and Magenta amusedly smiles, again while still chewing on the gristled remains of Eddie she put in her mouth minutes ago now. We now see Brad and Janet both clearly having trouble taking in the events of the last 15 seconds, and Dr. Scott breaks the fourth wall to say to us, "I knew he was in with a bad crowd, but it was worse than I imagined." He pauses, and then, speaking to Rocky, he continues, "Aliens." Rocky looks shocked with a mouthful of meat. Brad and Janet say in unison, "Dr. Scott," because that is an extremely shocking accusation. Frank, unbothered, says, "Go on, Dr. Scott," or should I say, Dr. Von Scott, sending a shock through Dr. Scott's body, causing him to tense up. Brad raises his voice at Frank, saying, "Just what exactly are you implying?" before slamming his fist onto the table and Janet's hand in the process. And Dr. Scott screams, "It's all right." Brad responds, "But Dr. Scott," and Dr. Scott quickly begins laughing it off and rubbing his hands and overly casually says, "That's all right, Brad." Music begins, and Brad exasperatedly looks at Frank for answers. Frank has an almost bored look on his face when Dr. Scott begins to sing. Well, to speak. Sing, from the day. And that's really all of the song that I can stomach for today.
Well, I think you did an amazing job summarizing this sort of. It is sort of an interesting exposition minute, kind of.
It's a really enjoyable minute for different character choices, I'd say. And I'm really living for the melodrama in the scene, but I wouldn't say a lot happens.
I would agree. The biggest real moment of, well, I guess there's 2 minutes of revelation. First of all, they reveal that we're eating Eddie. I think that's the first time in the movie that is actually, like, if you were watching the movie for the first time, I think that's the first time you would know that, right? We find out along with the other dinner guests.
Yeah, I think so. If you're perceptive. I know this might just be that I'm incredibly stupid, but it kind of flew over my head until the reveal.
Well, this is the most overt revelation of the aliens thing, but we had already spoken in a previous minute about how Riff kind of gives us a big ol' hint earlier. So there's that.
The alien alert thing. But this is the first time that it's really spoken, I think, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So that, oh wait, well, there's the UFOs thing. attached to the Federal Bureau of Investigation of that which you call UFOs. But anyway, Dr. Scott...
I wouldn't say that that is inherently a thing that would make me say, oh, Frank is admitting that he's an alien. It could just be that he's just like, Dr. Scott is doing this thing, and he is going to steal my technology.
Yeah, at that point, it doesn't really differentiate him from a mad scientist. But I'm sorry, Kelly.
It's okay. I think it's pretty clear through context clues. Why else would he be upset that somebody from the Federal Bureau of Investigations for UFOs was coming to his castle? And at that point, we've already heard Riff say Earthlings. But I do agree, this is the first time where it is 100% without a doubt. If you're paying attention to the movie, you should not have trouble understanding what's going on at this point. Because Dr. Scott literally breaks the fourth wall to tell us. Why do you think he turns to Rocky to say aliens?
I also want to interject here. I love that Rocky's mouth gapes open in surprise, implying that he understands what the concept of aliens are, and that's something I noticed.
Yeah, and he's like, oh my god, what the hell?
So my thought process is Dr. Scott doesn't necessarily know that Rocky is a creation. He does hear Frank say the peculiar thing of, I made you, but I can break you just as easily. But he might be thinking that that isn't literal. So
he must not realize that. I mean, maybe it depends how much surveillance they're doing of Frankenfurter, I suppose. But yeah, I wonder if he ever has any idea that this is half nephew for him.
It could be that he's like, oh, I am somehow drawn to this person who's very stupid, but in a way that I kind of resonate with.
It's almost like he's still
True.
here.
Sometimes I can still hear his voice. I mean, really, the time to say that is when Eddie does the I'm out of my head. But the other thing that I was kind of contemplating is it's especially creepy for Rocky to be eating the flesh of his brain twin. It's almost like a reversal of that scene in Hannibal, the movie Hannibal, where Hannibal Lecter is cutting off slices of that guy's brain and feeding it to him while he's still alive.
Yeah, doesn't he serve a guy his leg to his own leg in a show? That's literally what's happening. I've never seen the Hannibal show.
I haven't seen the show, but in the movie and the book, Hannibal, one of the sort of minor villains, Hannibal basically, as a show of devotion to Clarice, because the guy was fucking with Clarice's career, has carefully removed the top of his skull and is slicing off pieces of the brain that he doesn't need, and a lobotomized version of him is eating it with great gusto. It's incredibly grotesque, but not unlike the situation here, really.
It is quite horrible.
Yeah. Great movie, in my opinion. I love both Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal very, very much. Anyway, the reason that we've called you here today, Brad, is actually because you've got some good context for the whole Dr. Von Scott conversation. So, first of all, I just want to interject here. I've been very excited to say this. Richard O'Brien says in the commentary he did not want Dr. Scott to have a German accent. He thought that was incredibly stupid because it's supposed to be a reveal in this scene. And I've always thought that. When I'm playing somebody in dinner scene and there's the whole Dr. Von Scott and everyone's like, what? Oh my god, what exactly are you implying? I'm always just like, oh, Dr. Scott's German? Because, seriously, what the hell? Because he has a German accent. It makes a lot more sense knowing that the movie was not written with that intent, and I guess perhaps in the show also was not written with that intent.
I don't know if you guys discussed that about the show, but I understand why they did what they did for the movie, but I just think it would have been so much more fun and campy if Meatloaf had been playing Dr. Scott.
Yes, we have discussed it, and we completely agree with you that the double casting of Scott and Eddie is just better. It makes more sense. I mean, the whole kind of joke of those characters, right, is that I understand that it's like a less cinematic thing, but no hate to Jonathan Adams.
He does great in the role, for sure.
But anyway, yeah, so I don't know if you agree with me, Leandra. I have always hated the reveal moment because it's stupid, because he is very audibly German.
Yes. This is a very, very odd joke that does not land because of the choices that were made.
Well, because that wasn't the intent. But anyway, of course, what Frank is more specifically implying is that Scott is a Nazi.
I did not see that coming. Yuck, 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 yuck.
Save it for the callbacks section. But yes. And so, Brad, the reason that these minutes are the ones you're joining us for is because you've got some great historical knowledge about that will give context to this joke. So why don't you enlighten us?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if anyone around our general age demographic grew up, you've all been experienced to the various hokey History Channel secret Nazi UFO projects and things like that. It's a big pop culture thing too, obviously, and that has kind of continued on, even, from the 70s into modern day. It's a big part of, like, Hellboy is a great example that has a lot of, occult Nazi mysticism tie-in stuff, and there's the whole aspect of, like, the Captain America movies and comics. Obviously, the Red Skull is, a Nazi officer who's doing all these kind of secret space projects in the background of the Third Reich. But the whole reason for that, and I'm kind of cribbing from some, basic Wikipedia articles here just to kind of give some background, because this is all kind of stuff I've just kind of, picked up through osmosis from listening to various podcasts and reading things and, History Channel shows. So it's all kind of a vague mush in my brain, but I'll try to credit some sources here when reading. This is going to be straight from the Wikipedia article. I can
So no James Somerton shit. Yeah, is what you're saying.
I'm just trying to respectfully give credit where credit is due. I will say too, the occultism is vastly blown up. It was kind of it kind of grew out of, like, propaganda about the Nazis and sensationalist stuff in the 50s and 60s. So by that point, it had kind of, it's a great, basis for a story, right? There was this regime that seemed like they were, close to, taking over all of Europe or, even the world. And, that obviously leads to a lot of, a good background is they're pretty, no one's going to be making the Nazis the good guys. You know what I mean? So, one of the bases for that, though, is that there was a vague secret society that was inducted into the Third Reich by Hitler called the Thule Society. There were a few high-ranking Nazi officers who were members. Hitler was not one of them. People have claimed that he was a secret member, and that whole society was based off of like German occultist beliefs and what is called in German Volkisch, which in English is folkish. So it was a lot of like German old Germanic folklore and mythological beliefs, and the UFO stuff kind of got tied into all of that because there was a big UFO craze in the 50s. That's when the Betty and Barney Hill stuff happened, and like Roswell, and that really, blew the outer space threat into, or like the idea of an outer space threat into the public consciousness.
This is really interesting. So yeah, basically the whole migration of former Nazi scientists to the US and kind of getting the serial numbers filed off was also part of this joke, correct?
A lot of the high level scientific members of the Nazi regime were bought and brought over to the US to work on the US aerospace engineering programs, because even before World War II was over, the beginnings of what would be the Cold War in the 60s were already kind of starting a little bit.
Was this through Project Paperclip?
I think that's what it's called, yes.
Just so wild that they went, "Oh, you're forgiven because you're smart. Come over here. We gotta win another war."
Yeah, and that's something you'll see references to in a lot of another really famous example. If we have any Archer fans in the audience, the character of Krieger in Archer is sort of the same deal. He's very much a former Nazi scientist. Actually, I think they eventually establish he's a clone of Adolf Hitler.
He's one of the boys from Brazil.
Anyway, he is one of the boys from Brazil. That actually made me laugh a lot, that episode. But yeah, so anyway, because of that, and again, that's another example of, basically the CIA or FBI is pulling Nazi scientists.
Yeah, there is actually a whole bunch of, this is like such a segue from the original topic, but there are like little cultures, and I want to say, I think in Argentina was one of the main places where a lot of ex-Nazi officials repatriated to after the war to escape, consequences.
Oh yeah.
But they.
Yeah, and Brazil also has a little Nazi.
Yeah, but there are whole like Argentinian towns that will wear like lederhosen and do like German folk dances and stuff. It's a little strange.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's sort of a big joke that if you meet a white Argentinian or one with a German name, you should be side-eyeing.
Somebody's grandparents have a lot of splaining to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, at least, my family may have had children with their siblings, but at least we weren't Nazis. So there you go. For those of you who didn't know, Nazis were obsessed with UFOs, and this goes a little deeper than you might have realized. I think most people understand that this is supposed to be a joke about him being a former Nazi scientist, but at least I didn't originally realize that there's a specific connection to the UFO thing. So thank you so much for that breakdown, Brad. So yeah, like I said, I like to actually say to my dinner buddies here, if I'm playing a dinner scene character, I like to actually say, "What? Dr. Scott's German?" And apart from that, sitting at this table gets really long, we're playing with the little plastic body parts that we used for meat pieces. We're making stupid jokes at each other. I'm shoving shit in my mouth.
I'm
And
asking Kelly to not put things in her mouth.
or daring me to put things in my mouth, depending on your whim. Let's not get it twisted. One time I ate one of the disgusting old stale pieces of toast that got thrown up onto the stage just to upset Leandra, and it worked. She hated it.
Yes, it did. I hated that a lot.
So, I don't know. Do you guys have any shadow casting things you like to do during this minute?
I know at least for me, as Riff, it's always fun to mime potentially pouring the wine on people, or if Kelly is playing Janet or Rocky, have kind of a no t-shirt, wet t-shirt contest with the wine.
Yeah.
As when I'm playing Brad, it's a much appreciated break at that point, to be honest. You get to sit down for a little bit, and
I do like sitting
there
down.
are only a few like major cues that you need to really do, and at that point, at least in our cast, someone is organizing the underwear run, so the audience is distracted, so it's a nice kind of chance to not have to like think too hard about the show. It's a nice break right before floor show and kind of preparing for all of that. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
I do. I just get easily bored.
I definitely agree. But Brad, you mentioned underwear run, and while I don't necessarily want to talk about it in a lot of detail, I do want to take this opportunity to kind of address what it is and maybe how we go about setting it up. So, Brad or Kelly? No, Brad. Yeah, Brad.
Aw, I'm the
How
one she
does
likes better.
Yeah. That was a real Rocky or the audience? Rocky.
how does Underwear Run get started?
So, there will be a reveal at the end of Eddie's Teddy, and Janet will run to Rocky for comfort, and we will discuss all of this in detail. Frank smacks Janet in her bitch face, and then she goes off running out of the theater, and the audience is encouraged to follow her. And I believe Frank takes up the rear. I've only done the underwear run on cast, I think, like once, maybe. And that was during Hat Night when I was playing Frank. So I have no idea if I was even remotely close to how that's supposed to be run.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, ideally, Janet runs out, Frank follows her, and then the audience, in an orderly single file line, follows them. That's not usually what happens, but that would be the idea.
It is about as orderly as you can expect a bunch of relatively 20-somethings to be when hammered.
And naked. Yeah. So not at all, and sometimes there are stampedes, and sometimes I come very close to having a little Mufasa moment. But in general, yeah, it's a fun time. The audience loves it. Most of them are not like me and rarely strip down to their underwear in public, and it's a huge thrill for them. They don't have to strip, at least at our cast. We allow people to participate clothed, but at that point you're just running, which is crazy to do.
Yeah, and I find that usually it's the audience just needs to have permission to do it, I guess it is a slight amount of peer pressure, but usually someone will be like in the cast will be like egging them on, like, come on, go ahead, it's fun, and then they'll get into it, and like once 2 or 3 people start doing it, then the whole theater is naked.
A note for listeners: many casts don't do the underwear run. That is something that I'd say most casts don't do. We're not the only cast who does it, but we are one of a handful.
Yeah, the first time I ever encountered an underwear run was at our cast. It's a huge hit. I do encourage any casts who have the permission of their theater to organize one, but obviously it's not feasible in all situations.
You also might not want to do it if you don't want to see people you know in like banana hammocks.
Well, they would not be doing Rocky.
That's true.
Theoretically. But yes. You will see a lot of people. I've seen such buttholes.
Yeah, we do try to tell them to keep their naughty bits covered. The success ratio of that is not always great.
Well, the thing is, your naughty bits are technically covered when you're wearing a banana hammock, but when you start running... Yeah. I actually, a while ago, saw there was a legal advice post on Reddit where this guy was asking about the legality of going jogging in basically that type of underwear or with a really insane wedgie so that his butthole would be exposed, and people were then going through his post history, and it was like he exclusively posted on like fetish forums for like drawing Ed and Eddie with extreme wedgies and stuff.
Shocker.
And they were like, okay, yeah, I know. They were like, do not go jogging with your butthole out. Like, even if it might technically be legal, you are going to get in trouble for this. So,
enjoy your fetishes with the consent of other people, is what I will say.
Yeah, Brad just likes to have extreme wedgies in the privacy of our own bedroom.
And Leandra loves to enjoy her sucked toes there as well.
In our bedroom.
I mean, you're there.
I hate that. I hate it so much.
Oh my god.
So I will throw out there that one of my kittens just is obsessed with feet and toes. And
That's a classic kid.
Yeah, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and this cat will have attacked my foot and it's just mauling it. And if I had a foot fetish before, I definitely don't have one now because this is too much attention on the little piggies.
Well, no, you like to be the one sucking toes.
No.
That's been known.
No.
We've been knowing.
Absolutely not.
You could name that cat Oscar. It would be very fitting.
Which one is it? Is it Earl?
It's Earl. Earl is obsessed.
I figured it was Earl. So yeah, I wanted to highlight that I love the plastic. I genuinely think this is a play food ketchup bottle that is labeled ketchup.
It may not be. It could be one of the normal
really
ones.
looks like one.
Like I've seen those exact ones in stores before.
Well, maybe not. It sure looks... It looks fake to me and small, but yeah.
To me, it looks like one of the bottles you get at like the platonic ideal of a diner where you get like a greasy burger, just cheese, burger, and fries. And there's a yellow mustard bottle and a red ketchup bottle, and that's it.
Usually, I don't know. I don't know, but I do know that Frank is uncultured AF to be squeezing that much ketchup onto, I guess, any meat that is served in that fashion. Not that I really have room to judge because I am of Appalachian Scandinavian descent, and those people will put ketchup on everything.
No.
Any savory food and many sweet foods, my relatives will drown in ketchup.
Now, Leandra, someone who has sampled human flesh before, what's it like?
I have?
I mean, that's what Kelly told me.
I actually do want.
I did?
I did? I think this came to Brad in a dream.
I think you guys are failing to pick up on my bit.
Oh, is this an eating your girlfriend out sort of thing?
No, I was just being dumb. I thought you were going to talk about, I don't know, your time with the...
He was wanting to be yes and.
Oh, I gotcha. Well, better luck next time, champ.
I'm sorry that we were too stupid. I was like, oh my god, I'm so jealous. Because I'm curious.
You know what?
What?
If this is going to come up organically, then I'm not going to save it for the next minute. I'm simply not. I recently was listening to last podcast on the left, and they just did an entire series about these the crash in the Andes of the soccer team, and they all had to start eating human flesh to survive. But one of the things that they kept bringing up was the fact that cannibalism is not 100% accurate a term for eating human flesh. It has to include a ritual aspect for it to be considered cannibalism. And if it's just the eating of human flesh as a matter of sustenance or as just part of what you think is okay in your society, that is considered anthropophagy.
Oh, shout out to the movie Anthropophagus. That's actually interesting. So those that tribe in Papua New Guinea that gets that really rare disease, or I actually think it's been mostly eradicated now that people understand what was causing it, but they were engaging in cannibalism.
Yeah. If it is a religious or ritualistic sort of thing that you're doing, then that's considered cannibalism. But specifically with these soccer players that were in the Andes, because a lot of them were Catholic, and cannibalism is a sin, they had to really work through if it was something that they could do to survive, and they kind of landed on the fact that it isn't it isn't a sin if you're doing it for sustenance, and there was something about the body of Christ is not considered cannibalism because of transubstantiation, something like that. I wasn't super paying attention to that part of it, but
Okay.
but yeah, I think that in this instance, I don't know if this counts as anthropophagy or cannibalism. Is there?
I would say I would say anthropophagy because I mean the closest thing to the ritual would be the happy birthday, but it's not really related to the cannibalism.
I actually have a small segue here. This is the hashtag cannibalism fun fact that I learned earlier this week, and it coincides with one of my other hyperfixations, which is prehistoric things. And this one, I guess, is more anthropology because it is about Neanderthals. I don't know if that fully qualifies as paleontology. I don't know if that distinction is there. I clearly did not go to school for that, or I would know. But there's a leading theory now that part of the reason why Neanderthals went extinct is that they had a predisposition to be okay with consuming, fellow members of their tribe in dire situations, and as the Homo sapien population slowly compete with them for more and more resources, there's a pretty prevailing theory that they basically ate themselves to extinction.
That's really sad.
Yeah.
Well, I actually I find it particularly sad because I'm weirdly sympathetic towards Neanderthals, but
Now listen, I still think
Brad.
about those little like effigies with like tiger heads that are not tiger but like
Yeah.
lion heads, and we have no idea what they are, what they're supposed to represent.
yeah. When I learned that they had music, it bummed me out.
You're listening to 104.5 rocks clattering Neanderthal FM.
Well, thank you for that, Leandra. Speaking of sympathy, I thought that Janet looked really sad for Columbia when she went off to wail in the other room.
She does. But as this minute progresses and as this song continues, she becomes more and more visibly bored. And I think that it's the funniest thing in the world.
I mean, yeah, she's saying what we're all thinking,
Yeah,
right?
much like Kelly during the actual show.
It's so true. Oh man. But yeah, I thought it was interesting and kind of sweet that she genuinely seemed to feel sad for Columbia in that moment.
Janet has feelings.
Shocking, but yes. And then I didn't have a whole lot else. Oh, I did want to say we've got an update on Doorgate, the lead lighted doors. Richard O'Brien in the commentary for this minute was he was, oh my god, there's the doors again, and then he reveals that they were stolen apparently from the hotel, which I don't know if that's true, but he was very insistent that that's why they weren't in the hotel anymore. The idea that somebody carried off those gigantic doors seems strange to me, but he was insistent. He's like, that's why I can't find them. I can't find them anywhere. Now, I'm not going to keep bringing up the doors because like there's he keeps bringing them up. I'm not going to mention it every single time he does, but he keeps bringing them up, and eventually Patricia Quinn got frustrated with him during this scene and was like, oh, leave off with the doors, I'll send you some doors, I'll find doors like that and just send them to you. So
they're
yeah.
beautiful doors, Patricia.
Yeah, I mean, basically, he was like, I love them, and I'll never find doors like that again. Like, and I was like, I want to be loved the way that he loves those doors. I want someone to see in me what he sees in them. But yeah. So that was just my interesting.
This is a
tidbit about
podcast episode of people who do that for you.
Aww. Brad's like,
no.
Oh no.
But another interesting thing in the commentary that I thought was very sweet for him to point out, he said, I think Peter Hinwood's acting, his simple acting here is wonderful. There was no ego involved. And I was like, it's true.
He is so good at coming off as a mindless hog.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people don't, Peter Hinwood included, people don't give him enough credit, but he was really, he was making choices and doing fun things, and I think he really did create a character from this.
Yeah, that mouth-dropping surprise moment is one that I did not really catch before, and I really enjoyed that. And another thing I noticed, which I'm sure won't say anything about me, but Little Nell's tit makes an appearance before the peekaboo scene here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't notice that, which is kind of surprising.
It's right before she stands up to go to the door. She adjusts her shirt and her titty's poking out.
Leandra, tit watch?
It is confirmed.
Wow. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. If you are a 14-year-old boy listening to this podcast in your room, you can rewind the movie to that point and pause it.
Yeah, if you ever needed if that one scene of Little Nell's tit just wasn't doing it for you, there's another one.
2.
Yeah, I guess this...
Because there's peekaboob and then there's rose tits.
It is, in fact, at 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 21 seconds that you will see the side of a nipple. It's not the boob that is closest to the camera. So Brad had to squint.
I know you had a coming of age as a gay girl back in the 60s or something like that, but at this point we just have internet porn. You don't have to do this.
I think that because I've told you that I don't watch porn. It's not an ethics thing. It's not a moral thing. It's that I just don't. I don't really get the appeal of porn. I do not have a problem with other people watching porn, but it's just not a thing that has ever made me go, oh, this is delightful. Just not for me.
I mostly agree, although I sometimes will for non-horny reasons.
Oh, same.
Yeah,
like,
so.
if you want
so
to
will you,
watch the Rocky Horror Picture Show or the Rocky Horror Porno Show with me, I will. Like, multiple times, because it is the funniest thing in the world.
Speaking of funny porn, I think we even sent Leandra a quality video earlier today that I don't know if she's watched yet.
Oh, yeah. Did you not watch that yet, Leandra?
I have not yet watched Cake Farts. I have not.
Listeners, boo this man.
I will. I promise.
Cake Farts is really... I have no idea how you missed out on it in its heyday. It is an important piece of our culture.
Yeah, I mean, you remember You're the Man Now dog, right?
I do.
Yeah.
I remember all of the Lando was not sort of You the Man Now dog things.
Yeah, I guess this is dating us incredibly for our Gen Z listeners, I guess, so we gotta throw some like Fortnite jokes in here to keep the attention spans going. It is.
You guys gotta
it
watch
really is
Cake
strange
Farts.
how long they spend just like glamour shotting that cake. It's not even an impressive cake. It's like a flat chocolate slab.
It is baby's first, like the first cake you learn how to bake. It doesn't look that good. I can see why it's the one they chose to just get farted on.
Do you think after filming they were like, hey, cake is cake?
I feel like I don't have to watch this anymore.
No, you still have to watch it. Something else about Cake Farts, and don't worry guys, we will eventually get around to recording Cake Farts Minute, but for now, just an overhead view. Something else about Cake Farts that I don't think, I have always been mystified by, how did she fart that much? That was crazy. It is insane, and she's really farting because they close up on her butthole and you literally see the frosting flying out of her butt. So it is happening. They're not sound effects, and I just don't understand how she was able to achieve that level of flatulence. Leandra?
Don't look at me. I'm not the farty one on this call, Brad.
That is so...
Okay, Brad has been exonerated.
No, for that one, sure. But that doesn't mean that Brad is not a farty boy.
And that time that we were arriving at your apartment after Rel's wedding?
Oh, no, I definitely shit my pants then.
Yeah.
I think since everyone except Kelly has shared a fart story, I have to talk about the time I was working downstairs on the 3-floor townhouse. And I heard a triumphant blast all the way from downstairs.
I have seen Bambi freak out by Kelly farts.
All I'm missing is the cake.
Yeah, you guys are adding to your, I guess, growing repertoire of fetish content for this podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome, listeners. Least you could do is go leave us a 5-star Apple Podcast review. So do that.
Is this really 5-star work?
Oh, believe me. I mean, listen, we've got nothing on the Cake Farts girl, but still. So that was a great minute of the movie.
It sure was. You know what I love about this minute more than
Cake farts.
More than not talking about cake farts anymore? The callbacks. Kelly, what sort of callbacks do you have for this?
Well, hey, we have a guest.
Oh.
We have to offer it to the guest first.
Brad, fart on this cake.
Yeah, is that the rite of passage for every podcast guest? And you have them just, demolish a cake.
Yeah. No, yeah, we always offer, if the guest happens to know any callbacks, you're more likely than many of our guests to actually know some. So,
Yeah.
what do you got?
The I think most prominent one, probably from this this minute, is when Columbia gets up and there's kind of an awkward silence. Um, a common one is for someone to say, "We've replaced Columbia's vibrator with something painful." You can use a cactus. You can use, I don't know, a spiked dildo. I think I've heard Lego bricks one time. Let's see if she notices. And then she does her dramatic scream.
And then, so there's two ways. I actually wrote in my notes that I was saving this one for Leandra because I know it's a favorite of hers. So, Leandra, what are the two options for how to finish this one?
There's a wrong choice, and I do want you to understand that if you think that this is the right one, you are mistaken, and I feel bad for you. You are having a hard time understanding comedy. The incorrect choice after that scream is to go, nope, that's the same sound she always makes. I can explain to you why this is wrong. Leave a 5-star review and your email address, and I can send you my 50,000 word essay on why that one is not funny. The correct callback is,
I mean, it's not unfunny, but the other one's funnier.
The correct one is, she does and she likes it. Isn't it about time you made the switch?
Yes. Which, for our younger listeners, is a reference to a series of commercials, like hidden camera commercials. And that's pretty much word for word how the script would go. So that's why it's funnier. And the idea that she loves that cactus vibrator is funny.
There's that one I guess brought up a little too early. I did not see that one coming, which is, it's fine.
Yes, and that would happen. That would happen when Brad says, "Just what exactly are you implying?" And the answer is that he's a Nazi. I did not see that coming. Yeah, it's whatever. It's a pun.
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. Pun.
The other good one I think is still in here is when Scott talks to the camera. It's always really simple, but the audience always finds it funny because I think it doesn't require any previous knowledge of getting it to be funny. But if you, after he does that, you can shout, "Who the fuck are you talking to?" And then that usually gets people pretty good.
Yeah, and then the response to that one is, "Who the fuck are we talking to?"
I do like that.
Yeah. It's a great fourth wall break. It kind of reminds me of my favorite joke, which is a knock knock joke. Leandra, you have to start.
No, Brad has to start because he's the guest.
All right, Brad, start.
Knock knock.
Who's there?
Who?
The joke is you tell you be like, "I've got a great knock knock joke," but you have to start. So that people never think about it. They're always like, "Knock knock," and then you're like, "Who's there?" And then you see like existential horror on their face because they're like, "Oh no, I don't know what to say." Okay, but did you have any other callbacks, Brad?
I think that's all the ones I can think of. Because this whole scene just blends together in a blob in my head a little bit, so I'm not sure if the Rocky eating one happened yet. I think it did, right?
It did.
No, it didn't.
Is that later on? Is that, I don't know.
Is it the Rocky eats like Marine?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. I got confused about what you meant, but yes, the Rocky eat like Marine officer happened right at the end of last minute.
Yeah, I really get a kick out of that one every time. It makes me chuckle.
That's a very good one. But I only have a couple more.
Okay.
There's when he says, "We came here to discuss Eddie." People say, "Dinner?" And then when Frank says, "That's a rather tender subject," you can say, "That's a rather tasteless joke." And then almost immediately after that, after he says another "slice anyone," we see Brad, then Janet, Dr. Scott all put down their forks kind of in succession, and it's Brad gets it, Janet gets it, Dr. Scott gets it, and then Rocky is just eating away still, so it's Rocky gets it, but he just doesn't care. Right? Something like that. And then that is it. That's all I have.
I have a couple more.
Oh, wow.
So,
All right.
Keep that train rolling.
We came here to discuss Eddie. We came here to digest Eddie.
Oh.
It was a fun one.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of at the end of the Janet gets it, Brad gets it, Dr. Scott gets it, Rocky doesn't give a fuck. The end of that one is, and Columbia's already eaten Eddie before. And then an alternate to the ladies and gentlemen, we've replaced Columbia's vibrator with a cactus. Let's see if she's noticed. Is, ladies and gentlemen, we've replaced Columbia's lube with Frank's red hot sauce. Let's see if she'd notice. And then she screams and you go, "Frank's red hot. I put that shit on everything." Which is like, it is funny, but it's not the funniest, which I think is unfortunate because I think that against most other callbacks, it would be a winner.
Yeah.
That is true.
And then the only other one is when you see Frank squirting the ketchup, you go, "Ketchup on meatloaf? I get it." But that is all I had. So, Brad, do you know how we end our episodes?
The same way we end our shows, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Jinx.
With no. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, so get the fuck out.
I'm gonna do the middle finger.
Double feature picture show.
Those of you who have not seen Cake Farts, I highly recommend you watch it. And the best thing about Cake Farts to me is the way that it starts, which is this woman looks into the, well, first they show you a cake for an unreasonable amount of time, but then this woman looks into the camera and goes, "You know what I like the most? Cake farts."
And then you can
That
only
woman
imagine
is
what
Kelly.
happens next.